Good evening, you're watching See You at USC. I'm your host, Daniel DiMaso, and tonight we have cinematic composers, the Newton Brothers. Stay tuned. Welcome back to See You at USC. Again, we have the Newton Brothers here, Andy Grush and Taylor Stewart. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
First thing I got to ask, where's the name Newton Brothers coming from?
Well, at the time we wanted a name that kind of unify us, so we wouldn't have to say who's on the project. And we're both big fans of Isaac Newton, and so and we kind of always felt like, music was basically math, anyways.
Sure.
So that's kind of where the inspiration came from.
We had a long list. We talked about it for weeks, I think, and we had a list of all these crazy names. But we wanted a name that would allow us to score Fight Club 2, I should say, or Legends of the Fall 2. So we thought we tried to do something that was kind of in the middle and not too racy.
Yeah, it sounds almost like a grassroots band when you say
totally,
it. When you read it on paper, you're not sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So how did you guys meet? How did you guys start composing together?
We met through friends.
Okay.
And we just started, initially it was just, I love music, you love music, oh, we have similar tastes. We started talking about music. Taylor was working on an awesome album at the time. He asked me to come over and listen to some tracks, and I came over and was able to help out a little bit with it. And then we just kind of started talking more about it and wanted to work with each other, and we just decided, like, let's do this, let's work together.
Yeah. So how old were you guys when you guys met?
God, was it 2001?
I think it was around 2001, yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't actually start writing really together in 2006.
Okay.
He had done Moth and Prophecies and Rules of Attraction, and I was a big fan of those films.
Sure.
And I had just, we've been working for Hans Zimmer at the time, and so we both just started writing on some stuff together, and it worked out. So we were probably, I don't know, 28, 20,
yeah, that
27,
sounds right.
something like that,
Yeah.
when we were starting to write together.
Yeah.
What was the experience like working with Hans Zimmer? I imagine being a composer, that's a huge opportunity with an idol of yours.
Absolutely.
How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, he's a very talented composer. Obviously, everybody knows his stuff, and there was a whole group of us, and we all kind of learned off each other and learned from Hans. And for me, I didn't stay. I kind of started to do my own thing. But for the time I was there, everybody was great, and he's a great collaborator and obviously a brilliant composer.
Yeah. So you said at the time you met, you were working on a solo project or a different album. What?
Well, at the time I was working on, I had been in mini bands and stuff.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I came from, my background, and then I was working for Hans at the time. He was doing Da Vinci Code.
Interesting.
And he had finished Moth and Prophecies and Rules of Attraction, and I'll let you say that, but.
Yeah, and I was working on 2 other films, and when I finished those, we just decided to start sort of collaborating together.
Sure.
And strangely enough, like it just worked out really quickly. Like you'd think there'd be some sort of like, oh hey, we're gonna end this cue on this key. Maybe you should start the next cue in this key.
Right.
We like the chaos that would just ensue between projects. Like that sounds really good on paper, but it would never happen. It'd be like, I haven't slept for 4 days. Like I don't know what the key it ends in. I can't remember. But like strangely enough, the cues would just blend together. They would sound similar, and we try to kind of keep it that way to this day. We still we keep each other out of the loop a little bit on things.
Sure.
That way, creatively, we have sort of 2 in the beginning. Yeah, that way we sort of have 2 different perspectives on each project, which is good nice because then we can sort of. It's almost like we have 2 shots at each sort of song or cue to figure out like, oh, it's good or it's terrible.
Do you feel like there are parts of the song where you can definitely say, or someone who are familiar with your music could definitely say like, this is Andy or this is Taylor? Is there a different enough, or are your styles similar enough that they blend well?
I think that we know when we're obviously doing the movie,
right?
But there's cues on where we hadn't slept and we've been working intensely. 5 years ago from a film where I could be like, I think I wrote that, but I'm not certain.
Yeah.
You know, it could have been. I knew it was, you know, one of us doing something. So it's not clear after time goes by, and we tend to write the same styles because I was kind of interested in working with him, you know, originally because I loved his music and the way he writes, and so I kind of think we both do write similar. We obviously have our differences.
Sure.
For sure.
Was the interest, I know you were saying you were in some mini bands and things like that. Was the interest always in composing for film or larger scores?
Well, I had grown up, my dad had, you know, been a musician, my mom sang in like operas and stuff, and so I was around music all the time, and I'd always been really into electronic music.
Okay.
And so, and I find composing, especially originally, to be a very isolating kind of thing. You sit in a room and you write music. It's not necessarily inherently collaborative. And then as I started doing it, I actually got my first start doing like shorts from colleges, and I would say, hey, you know, give me a chance, and that's kind of how I got my start. And then obviously when I got a taste of it, I wanted to do more and bigger projects.
Right. Does it seem like is there a love of film or theater in that you appreciate and you want to work alongside, or is it just the love of music and composing, creating different feelings?
I think it's. I'll let you answer. I think it's both.
Exactly. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, definitely both. It's there's I think the storytelling is like the base of all of it. Like, you know, when you leave a film or you finish binge watching a series on Netflix and you really enjoy it, you know, like I remember finishing the first season of Breaking Bad and just thinking like, what an amazing story, like how great, you know? And while music supports that, it needs a good story, as, you know, even cinematography, everything sort of needs the story. Without the story, you can have a beautiful film that's shot well, acted well, beautiful music, but without the story, people leave and they're like, okay, that was, what's the point?
What did I see?
Yeah.
So I think the love of film comes from the love of storytelling, and it all sort of plays together in a really unique and fun way.
Yeah, it inspires you. Obviously, you see visuals, you see a story, you see great actors pouring their heart out. It's
so between the two of you, you can play quite a few instruments. What was that like growing up? Was that something that your parents kind of pushed on you? Was it you had a hunger for it?
Well, I play like 2 instruments well. He plays like 30. Yeah. So let's clarify that.
That's not true.
But I'll let you.
I grew up. I started piano lessons when I was 4, and it was like Suzuki method, classical piano recitals. Like wear a suit on Sunday and go play piano, sit there and play like pieces. And when I was younger, I liked it for a while. But then it was like once I turned 8 and 9, it was like there's baseball. I don't want to practice. You know. But my dad played guitar, so he sort of started getting me into guitar as well, and I kept up the piano lessons. And then once I got into high school, it was like, oh wow, like this is really fun. Like I can work in theater too. And I started playing the saxophone and started playing some stringed instruments, and inherited like a clarinet from my grandfather that he got in World War II in France. And I was like, why? I try to play it on for a period of time. For about 5 years, I was on this kick of like, it will be in every film in some way. But now. Now it's not, but so it just kind of turned into this, like, I think it was more just not wanting to, at the time, there was no internet. Well, there was internet eventually, but it wasn't like, hey, I need someone to play an amazing sax solo. So I was just like, well, I'm just gonna go to the music store and buy a sax, and I'll play a terrible version, and then someone else will play it better. But as I started doing that more and more, I just started, I really like this. I'll just keep playing. I'll take lessons.
That's how it was in the beginning.
Yeah, so that's sort of how it turned into it. Now I'd say my skills have definitely declined because it's just like
you just hire people.
Get it written and hire someone who's amazing. Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you was, with all those instruments coming together, what sort of who were your influences? What was it? Was the dream always to play in a bigger band? Was it a solo career? Was it a rock star that you wanted to be? Was the dream always to compose? Or did that come a lot later in your career?
It was always, it probably sounds like, I'm sure every composer has a similar story who's around our age, but I saw Star Wars when it came out, and it blew my mind. And at the time, my uncle was a session piano player in Los Angeles playing on albums, And he came over to the house one day and just like whipped out the theme on the piano like it was really easy to play. And I just remember standing there like, what just happened? Like you just played that amazing tune that was in that movie that I love. And that was pretty much it. That was like, oh, this is amazing. And it was always, I didn't know though that you could do that for a living. It wasn't like something that was like, that I knew was available. So, but I did know I loved music.
So how did your first opportunities come about in film? Was it something you sought out, or was it you're just playing these gigs on the side and eventually something came along?
Yeah,
fell in?
I was actually in a finance job for just a couple years out of college, and just decided I was going to commit financial suicide and go to Berkeley and get a master's degree in film composing and orchestration. So I did that, and while I was there, a friend called me and was like, dude, I'm working on a Pauly Shore film. Can you come back to LA and work on it? So I was like, yeah, man, I'll do it. So I packed up my car. I drove back out here and worked on that. And that was the first sort of the first thing that happened. And then shortly after that, I was kind of hustling around town. Like I was coming to USC. I scored probably 25 USC short films. I did the same thing at Loyola. And then from there, I got a couple lucky breaks and worked on Mothman Prophecies, a film with Richard Gere, directed by Mark Pellington, with a couple other people as a collaboration, and then a film called Rules of Attraction, and then it just sort of kept going. And we met around that time, and we were both very interested in the same thing, and that sort of that's just spiraled.
It's true.
Yeah.
So it's sort of the same path for you. It kind of fell in, it snowballed, it started with student projects, or?
Yeah, it started with student projects. A little different path. I was assisting other composers.
Okay.
I assisted Hans for a while, several other composers, and then you meet different people, and you kind of get known for certain things. A lot of people come to me for really weird sounds and synthesizers and kind of obscure more things like that.
Okay.
And the idea of most composers, they're thought of as kind of these, stuffy, kind of not necessarily cool thing, and at the time I was the more weird music.
There's a niche for it. That you filled.
Yeah, so people would have me help with stuff, and then I kind of became my own thing and kind of expanded on that.
Yeah. Working in a wide array of genres, is there one that you find the most fun to play around with, or is there one that you sort of gravitate to?
It's tough. I mean, for me, it's funny because we've done a lot of, I would say, what we're most known for successfully, I would say, is probably horror films. But, if you look at those films, a lot of them have a really core story. And so I tend to originally love, films like Braveheart and science fiction kind of movies. But just a really good story. We did this movie with Danny Elfman called Before I Wake, which kind of reminds me of The Orphanage meets Pan's Labyrinth a little bit, some elements, and that was an incredible film to work on. It's a great story. So, those are the kind of movies I love to work on.
It sounds like perhaps the bigger the scope of the story, the more fun it is to create music for.
I just think the collaboration process is one element, working with the director and the producers, and then the storytelling, if it's done well with the actors and stuff. So I think that's for me like the key, whether it be science fiction or a horror film or whatever.
Wonderful. Well, we've got to go to commercial.
Sure.
Stick around. We'll be back with more from the Newton Brothers. Thank you for coming back to see you at USC. We're here again with the Newton Brothers. Boys, doing good, doing well. I want to ask you about the project that's most recently in theaters, The Bye Bye Man. Okay. It's touted as having this very weird sounds. I know you used a washing machine or a dryer. Can you tell me about the process of making the music for this movie?
Yeah, I mean this movie was there was a lot going on with this movie. We had an orchestra playing. We had the mad scientist over here just crushing crazy sounds. I don't even know. I can't even. I'll let you explain what you were doing. But
well, I think the key was first finding the riff / kind of melody that the director and producer were both liking.
Okay.
And she wanted this kind of classic I would say even 80s, had like an 80s element to it from
Yeah,
those films.
classic horror films.
Yeah, like even The Omen had some riffs, Halloween, those kind of films. So she wanted something that was a signature kind of riff for the Bye Bye Man.
Yeah.
So once we established that, which wasn't as hard as then coming up with the different kind of tonality of the sounds to give the film its own kind of unique thing. So we spent a long time on that. And the washing machine, we ended up making into like a rhythm, is essentially how that came. And it became this like rhythm that we use for the Bye Bye Man.
So when a new project is thrown at you, how do you start? Do you start with the script? Do you start with the footage? Is it a conversation with the director?
It depends what stage is in. Sometimes the film is like they just fired someone, you just jump in, and you got to go. Sometimes, like with Mike Flanagan, the director, we've done Oculus with, and a bunch of films with, and we start sometimes early on, like on a script. It just depends on the situation. But usually, once we're on the project, we sit down, we spot the film, we go through the film and see what they want, what they're looking for, and then from there we kind of begin.
So I mean, we were talking about all these crazy noises that Taylor's able to come up with. Where does that inspiration come from? Is it just a lot of time sitting at home or in the studio, hitting different things, or?
It's funny, it's funny. People always think that the melody and the music, that's actually the really easy part. Like they're actually writing the notes. It's the sounds, because it's a little bit of, you kind of know what it's going to be, but it's hit and miss, and there's accidents, and you end up using a lot of those happy accidents.
Right.
So I think it's just kind of trial and error, and you have a general idea. Like we recorded bees for Before I Wake, and then we had the orchestra like mimic the bee sound, that's kind of swarmish sound.
Oh, wow.
And we blended the two, so it sounds like a hornet's nest is kind of attacking you, and that's, we try to see what works. Sometimes it's terrible. You just have to try,
Yeah, we'll usually try 20 things, and like if 2 of them work, we're really happy.
It's a good day.
Yeah. You got to break the mold. You got to try something new.
Yeah.
How long does it typically take to finish a project once you're brought on?
How much time do you have?
That's a perfect answer.
That's my response.
That's a perfect answer. Yeah.
So
I mean, we've done a full film in just over 2 weeks. Yeah. And we've had a film run 13 months. So everything in between. I'd say the wheelhouse is probably 3 to 6 weeks. That's probably the normal.
When you're creating the music, is the film just sort of on loop on the screen as you're trying to come up with different sounds and noises, or is it just sort of internalized in you?
For me, it's in my mind.
Okay.
Yeah, like I'll turn off the computer and sit the piano if it's like a melodic-driven scene.
Okay.
Or I'll go to we have a bunch of synthesizers, and then I'll just mess around with that and that kind of thing. Yeah.
What is it like watching a horror film without the backing track? I can't imagine it hits the same way.
Yeah, it's a different experience for sure, because it can change a lot. I mean, we've all seen like the video on YouTube of the Psycho scene, right? The shower scene, where like here's the scene with like boom, like some nice smooth music, and you're like, oh, she's getting ready to go out on a date, or
or something else,
something else. And then there's the campy like modern classical track that's playing. It's like, oh, she's getting ready to like go out for the day, and like and then there's what's in there, which is like, oh, she's going to be violently murdered,
Right.
The music really dictates like what's going to happen, and it's interesting that sometimes when we get scenes, it's a tricky process, like, because what you say is scary to you, or you might say, I want tension, right? So tension to you might be different to me, might be different to Taylor.
And the director wanted that scene dry, by the way. Remember that?
Yes. That's a good point. Yes. So you kind of play with all the elements, and really it's just about kind of just jumping off the cliff and going like, okay, here we go. We're gonna throw up these ideas, and
it's helpful to have a director too who gives you a rope long enough so you can hang yourself, because you want to try, and because sometimes if you try too much, you miss the mark, you could get fired. So there's always
we've had some. We did a film called Hush, which was on Netflix, a great film, and the director gave us a lot at the beginning of the film. he wanted to try some things. So he's like, just go for it. So
It was great.
yeah, it was. We tried some things, and what's interesting is the film ended up just being like a big boom that starts the movie, and it's super effective and it's perfect. But to get there, we had to try. I feel like we tried like 8 or 9 things for the opening of the movie.
When you're trying, is it more of an intellectual battle of what would look good on a musical staff, or is it just kind of like trying stuff out and seeing what sticks and what feels right?
I
what
stopped
sounds right?
doing that from like
Yeah.
the days of shorts starting as a young guy. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely in this line of work, there's lots of the kids who love the Star Wars, the John Williams, the more traditional music, which we love too, and we love writing that kind of stuff. But in filmmaking, and it's about the film. It's not about the music, so I have to serve that. And a lot of times, if I was to write a piece like that, they would be like, "What's going on with you? Like, what are you?"
Yeah. There are times where like, I mean, sexy on music paper, sometimes it definitely doesn't translate, because there are times where like to serve a really intense scene, you'll have 2 notes that are just sustained for 16 bars with like 4 piano notes that are spaced out.
Super boring.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But in relation to when you see it with the film, it works really well.
You can
Yeah.
accent
It's a
certain
social
moments
network. Bum bum bum. It's
Right.
Yeah. Very simple. Very
Yeah, absolutely. So you just finished a new project, a Stephen King movie, Gerald's Room, correct?
Gerald's Game.
Gerald's
yeah,
Game. Gerald's Game.
It's in a room
Apologies.
though. Yeah.
He's in a room. So
Yeah.
it's
Fact.
fair
Yeah,
enough.
so that-
Not
that's
too
you're
far
right.
off. Not
Yeah,
too
you're
far
right.
off. Did you get to meet with Stephen King? Did he have input there, or was it all the director that's giving you feedback?
It's the director's been a long time fan of Stephen King, and
As we both have too.
yeah, as have we, yes. And he's had the idea of this film in his mind for more than 10 years. I feel like he'd tell us 15 years, 20 years. He's really wanted to do this film. I think the book was written in 93, 96.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting story, because it does take place in a room for the most part, and it's about a woman and her life and her story.
Yeah.
And it unfolds through the events in this film, and it's very disturbing.
I wish I could say I just came from hanging out with Stephen King. But
Yeah,
no,
we
but
did
no,
not get to.
unfortunately
yeah.
not.
But Mike the director did have some communication back and forth.
Okay.
And Stephen has seen the movie and he's a big fan of it. So.
Oh, wonderful. Well, that's great to hear. What do you guys do in your free time when you're not making music for films? You came here on your motorcycle.
Sure.
Do you go out riding? Is there other things that you do to sort of clear your head of
Running.
the music? And
A lot of running.
okay.
Yeah. Surfing when there's time and the water isn't bone-chillingly cold.
Yeah.
But just try to be outside, because writing music is so internal. You're in a cave.
Right.
You're writing music all day, and it's nice to kind of extrovert, get out there. And so for myself, I love to just run up in the hills and get out there.
Yeah, and strangely, we have pretty much the same it's identical. Like we both like running and surfing, so it's sort of like, hey, are you gonna get out today? No, not gonna get out today.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because you're in a room all day. So
Well, yeah, it seems like it's a good match for the both of you then.
Yeah,
the
definitely.
partnership works.
Yeah,
Oh, definitely.
Oh yeah,
like a marriage.
yeah. It definitely is. We talk every single day.
Do you-
I mean, I'd say the only time we don't talk is if we have a short period of time between projects, and it's like a weekend. We won't even we're just completely pieced out. But for the most part, we talk every day.
Sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
Is there one lesson or a big overarching lesson that you guys have learned through your years in the business in the last 10 years of your partnership or so, either about working together, working in entertainment, making music, life?
I mean, I think the rule. I think what I've seen is just always treat everyone with the utmost respect, and treat them really well, because that assistant of a TV show or editor of a movie could be the next Steven Spielberg, could be the next big whatever. So I've seen people become huge quickly, and so it's always good to you should always treat everybody really well, and I think that's treat with respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, definitely. Yeah, it's
tagging on, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think it's just in any whether you're film composing
business,
or whether you're trading stocks, I think that everything requires a different sort of personality and temperament. But I think at the end of the day, if you treat people well and you're positive about situations and, you know, transparent with people, it always plays out in the end really nicely. And I know that sounds like a big overall.
Well, it's the golden rule, yeah.
Yeah. But it really
it's
really
really
applies.
true.
Yeah.
It's really true. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes those cliche
Yeah.
or those tropes are very true.
Yes, they are absolutely.
If you have to define success, what is it?
I would say for me, success is coming over obstacles to a known goal. So you know, you for us, we got to work with Adrian Brody, and I had been a huge fan of Adrian Brody, and Tony came to this movie, and that was a huge success point for us. And then we got into the next thing, and we do a wide release, and I think Ouija is close to cracking 100 million worldwide.
Right.
So that will be another film where it's like, you know, everything's a success at some degree. So I think as long as you're happy and enjoying what you're doing and you're making progress, I think that's success.
And I think at some point many years ago, I just stopped even wanting to sleep. Like, I do sleep, but like I don't want to sleep very often because I'm so excited every day, whether it's morning or night. I mean, there are times at night where I'm complaining to him about something, but for the most part, like waking up in the morning just being excited about life in general, I feel like that's a sort of an add-on. So, I mean, I would mirror exactly what he said as well, but to add on to it, just being excited about your day, whatever it is, you know, is a really nice feeling to just wake up and go like, wow, I'm going to be really busy from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and I'm really excited about it.
Is that saying find what makes you excited to wake up, or is it saying flip your perception no matter what you're doing? Wake up and say, I'm excited to do this.
I mean, I think, yeah, you should be excited obviously about what you're doing, and your sole motivation shouldn't be money. It shouldn't be all these different things. It should be what you love to do, and then everything else kind of comes. Obviously, there's a reality to the fact that you can't live off of a cup of noodles or something while you write music all day.
I've been doing it for a couple of years. I think you can.
Right. But yeah, I think you know, it's finding that balance and moving up and being happy in the process.
Find what you love. That is all the time we have for today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys again.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for watching. See you at USC. Join us next week. Good night.
Hey, Erica, can we talk?